For the clutch cover disassembly, I'm going to show you the water pump real quick. Take out these 5 bolts. They're Phillips head. And take off the cover. Then there's a gasket. And there's your water pump. The bottom end kit came with a new water pump gasket, so I'll be installing that. Now I'm going to install the new gasket, then put the cover back on with the 5 bolts. I'm also going to pull out the old kickstart seal and put the new one in. Now I'm going to install the primary drive gear and the key. It just slides on. You got to make sure that the 2 notches, that notch right there and that notch right there, are lined up. I just use a rubber mallet and give it a couple taps in case it's difficult, but once you get it seated up against the O-ring or that gasket there, just kind of wiggle it back and forth to make sure you don't pinch the gasket in any weird spots or anything like that. And then line up your 2 notches right there. And I read on a forum that sometimes the primary drive gear can actually leak around the key, so I'm going to put a tiny bit of RTV on the key before I install it, so that hopefully I won't have that problem. To install your kickstart assembly, this part right here is going to rest on the bottom right here, and then this part of the spring that sticks out goes in that slot right there. So basically just line up this part, and this part should go into place, and then draw the spring back and lock it onto right there. There's where the spring should be lined up. Just slide it on in, and that bottom part's in place, and then you want to bring the spring around and lock it on right like that. After you put your primary drive gear on, this is the water pump gear. Go ahead and slide that on. This is the washer that you use. This washer is actually concave or convex depending on which way you put it on. You want to put it on so that it's convex, so that the center of the washer is pointing out towards the nut that you're going to install. Go ahead and slide that on. Put the nut on. And then I'll show you how to torque down that nut after I get the clutch installed. Here's your push rod that goes in the center of the transmission tube here. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the end, a tiny bit of bearing grease on the entire shaft of it, and then I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the other end and then install it. Put a little dab of grease on the end of your push rod and then go ahead and install that. And then the ball bearing, put a little bit of grease on that and put that in afterwards. The ball and the bearing that goes on the outside of the ball or the push rod can actually seize together whether you grease it or not sometimes, but there's a lot less likely chance for that to happen if you grease both of them. When I took my clutch apart, I zip tied everything together so that I wouldn't lose it. All the washers and the bearings and the gears, basket, everything together. So I'm going to snip that off and then show you the reinstall for the clutch. Alright, for the clutch assembly, you're going to put one of the big washers on. Next, you're going to install this spacer. Now you're going to install your outer clutch basket. Make sure it's fully seated on there. Make sure that the gears from the primary drive gear and the clutch are meeting. That's how you know it's fully sat on there. This nut I'm going to actually take off, Loctite, and reinstall after I have this back together so that I can hold it in place with the clutch. Now you're going to install the other large washer. Install your inner clutch basket. Make sure that's pushed down all the way, and then install your new lock washer for the nut. There's a little groove right there in the inner clutch basket that goes in. Just slide it on like that, and then take your clutch nut and screw that on. Now hook up the clutch puller, clamp that down, and the torque spec for this nut is going to be 65 foot-pounds. After you have that nut torqued down to 65 foot-pounds, bend this little tab over so that it's flush with the nut so that it can't come loose. That's the nut locked down with the lock washer. Now you're going to install your clutch plates. It's going to go fiber steel, fiber steel, fiber steel, back and forth. If you have a new clutch, or if your clutch has been out of the quad for a while, then you want to soak them for at least a couple hours in whatever fluid you're going to use in the transmission. As you install the clutch steel and fiber plates, there's a couple things you want to make note of. The O-ring is going to go on the inside of the fiber plates, so don't put those on double. Just make sure that there's only one in between each steel plate and underneath the fiber plate. When you install the steel plates, there's going to be a little part that sticks out like that. Basically, when you install those, you're going to want to have one of those sticking out every other notch on the clutch basket. So there's going to be about 12 notches and about 6, I think there's 6 steel plates. So you're going to want ones pointing here. The next one you put on, you're going to want to put it here, there, and so forth. Just skip every other notch on there, and then you'll have it installed properly. Install your clutch adjuster, then install your pressure plate, and then install your springs for your pressure plate with the washer and then the bolt. The torque spec on these is going to be 7 foot-pounds. Now I'm going to torque down the primary drive gear and the water pump gear. Make sure your key's installed. Put a little bit of RTV on the key so that it doesn't leak around the key. Install your water pump gear. The washer, make sure that it's convex and not concave. You're going to want to put a few dabs of blue Loctite on these threads, and then put on your nut. And the torque spec is going to be 47 foot-pounds. I'm just going to do 50. And then you could actually wedge a rag or something underneath here to keep the gears from moving so that you can torque down this bolt. Now for your clutch adjustment, really simple to do. It's just that one bolt right there in the middle. When you move that in and out, it changes where the clutch meets up. As you back it off, it moves the clutch further this way. As you tighten it, I believe it moves the clutch further that way. You just want to line up those two arrows, that arrow right there with that one right there. So when you pull on this completely, you can see it's a little bit out of adjustment. It needs to be right there. So I'm going to give that another quarter turn in, and then I'm going to install the washer and the nut right there to lock that down in place so it doesn't move. Now to lock that in place, just hold the center part still and use your 12mm wrench and tighten it down. Now install your clutch cover gasket. This dowel is removable, so if it's on the other side, if it's on the cover, then just take it out, put it in here, and it's a little bit easier because you can line it up with the water pump right there. Now install your cover. Sometimes it's a little tricky. I had a brand new kickstart seal that I installed, as you guys saw, so it takes a little bit of pressure to get it on sometimes. As long as you make sure it's lined up and you're not pinching that O-ring that's on where the water pump goes, and you're not pushing the seal out or bending the seal, then you're good to go. Once your clutch cover is in place, install your water pump cover. It's going to be 3 of the short screws. Now I'm going to install the Kickstarter. Just slide it on. It's basically 2 parts, that and that. Just slide it on, and I put the top on just to see about where you want it to sit. You can have it sit further forward or further backward depending on how you like it. I like to sit just back of center. That way when you kick it out, it's going to be more likely to go backwards. You won't have to put your leg forward as much. Now for the Kickstarter assembly, it's the spring that goes in first, then the ball bearing, and then the O-ring slides over the whole shaft right there, and then the screw goes in right here and goes through that notch to hold it in place. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on all of this. I'm going to put some grease in there, grease in the ball bearing and the O-ring and all that, just to hold water out, to keep those from rusting and keep the spring from breaking.